Welcome to Lithic Literature. We are, this is a experiment, if you will, using what they, including pareidolias, and including myself as well. So, Lithic Literature comes from me spending time with people from all over the world, speaking about a design that's found in stones, going back to the beginning of man, that I do believe goes back to Erectus. Yes, I do believe Erectus. I've been following this design when I first picked it up here in Maine, and then it expanded from there. So please enjoy. Although I spent time studying chemical engineering, over time I transferred my attention to art, in particular printmaking. As a young printmaker, I was very much enjoying the surface of the metal as I etched it with acid and scraped and burnished and polished and inked up my plates and ran them to the press. But the surface of the metal, the zinc metal that I worked on, is very much like the stones I'm looking at today. I understand the human mark, and I understand the human effort to create an image that communicates something of value. As a young artist, I became intrigued with the idea of a poetry through design, and I quickly began noticing these types of efforts in medieval work. But I also started picking up how these things overlapped in art history in general. I have spent a lot of time writing, making videos, trying to point out how this design works. And I finally came to a point where doing a literal painting of what I was seeing as a possibility to help people understand that the design I'm seeing in the stone can also be seen in my painting. I believe there's information that can even goes back to Pythagoreans and even before that. Okay, we are now moving on to the design that we're speaking of, that the fact that it's recorded in stone is nothing new. We have been looking at, information in the stones for as, long as we can remember. Even when we look at the Moses with his 10 Commandments coming down from Mount Sinai, it's hard to think that we can believe that some God came and handed him these tablets. No, he was up in that mountain transcribing, dumbing down what he felt would be useful for him to then bring down to the masses and have them have some simple things to follow. I believe that it is a form of hijacking of the design to use to control and manipulate people into thinking they have no will of their own. The concepts of heaven and hell, etc., when in actuality it is just a man with a tool trying to record what's most important. But also, the amount of information in this design goes far and beyond the 10 Commandments, and I assure you it will get us through the most narrow bottleneck. The design is important, and we need to be aware of it for the future and the past, and for the sake of being human. Okay, so we are recording. Perfect. So what I am focusing on right now is in the last couple of years, and I'm ready to move on. So that's what this video is about. I've been focusing on a few particular stones. One is the anvil that I found in my own backyard. It would be American. As I worked on this and created paintings, etc., it became clear that there was also modern material, but focused, the genre, the information, we have layers of, Walt Disney, American history, which is very different from the next stone I picked up, which was from online. They presented a European pebble found in Spain, supposedly Neanderthal, but then there too I found all sorts of European material from Jack the Ripper, Alice in Wonderland. So here too, I landed modern material. So finally, thinking I should try to find something. I included the Venus of Holzfeld's Venus, which is a piece that's contemporary with the Neanderthal, as opposed to Neanderthal, but was thought of being Cro-Magnon, and it's an ivory piece, had been broken and then reunited with some missing pieces in 2015. But in any case, we'll explore these together and try to make our way through what is modern and what is ancient material. But it's all wonderful. Thank you so much for looking. Okay, so I should be recording now. I'm trying to splice this together. So we're working with the Venus of Holzfels, and there's a lot to take in. It was repaired or redone in 2015 with pieces. It's very small. There is a place to run a line to wear it as a pendant. I think, of course, I think of automatically a big fried turkey. And I know they say this is supposed to be the Venus, but I think the Venus did a lot of cooking, and I think they had at this time vats of rendered fat where they were deep frying. So I'm having fun here, and I'm suggesting that that the Venus of Holzfels and the Cave of Holzfels may have been, if you think about it, maybe a very good, what do you call those places where you can go and get a sandwich with thinly sliced meat, bistro, a deli for the finest cut meats, and also for deep fried turkey. I don't know. Let's see if this works. All right, we'll give it a go. So I tend to hike barefoot. I enjoy the feel of the earth, but I just got stopped by another lady, and she asked me if I had tough feet, and I responded, I think that actually having sensitive feet helps when you're doing this, because I've been a nurse. I retired now, but I worked as a nurse over 20 years, and I know how the body works. Okay, so anyway, what I explained to her was that the brain, the nervous system is just an extension of the brain. When you walk, your feet will feel the surface. The more sensitive they are, they'll feel where they should lift to avoid injury. So it's not that my feet are tough. It's just that, no, they're sensitive and connected to my brain. And we can totally sense where to step and where to bear weight just because the feet know how to do it. They're all attached to your brain. And there's a lot of things about humans that we don't realize. And as a nurse, I can point it out. I used to do assessments, head-to-toe assessments, many of them. And it became a habit And then standing in a line at the grocery store, I'd be assessing everyone, knowing what meds they were on. I'm not going to tell you about Trump. I'm counting the days. Well, here you go, Lithic Literature. Another story. The beauty, with rocks that talk, and the ocean and the water. Everything speaks to me here. It's not crazy. At one time, it was normal. And we can all do this. We can all stop, look, listen, and it will all come back. Hey, I am here in Maine, working with Lithic Literature, and I have some beautiful things to show you. I'm not going to tell you where I am, other than I'm in Maine. These places are sacred, and I want them to stay that way. So, alrighty, here. This is one of my most favorite shots. I feel like, now I think this stuff is, you know, I don't know. Sometimes I think it's before the Ice Age even. Could it be? This piece here is just amazing. The large bird and the lady with the hair, and this is just too much. I've shown you this before, but I'm revisiting. Always fun to see how things are going. But this lady here, I've showed her to you guys before at some point, but you see the owl? It's the owl and the lady we often call Lilith. We have a Lilith here. And there's, you know, stuff all over these rocks. In Maine, I don't, when I go walking, you know, every rock speaks out as a story. It's fascinating. I know most people, some people think I'm absolutely kooky, and I don't mind. I don't mind. Everything in this place, everything has been worked. And I think it was worked a long time ago. You know, they think they understand the Ice Age, and they think they understand what was going along in the rivers, because the river, the mouth of the river, I question what they know about that. I think there's a lot about the pre-Ice Age. You know, who knows? But I'm telling you, I know. This stuff is all worked on. And, you know, some people think it's, you know, aliens or the devil himself, or, you know, or God. God speaks in the rocks. You know, we know about the 10 Commandments coming down from the great mountain etched in stone. But this is fun too. Look, this is one of my favorite scenarios here. This one's great. And I've taken better, the sun is off right now, so. But look at this. You know, they say this is all natural. No. Oh my God, that's my guy right there. That's me in the winter, covering myself up as much as I can. You know, that is just beautiful. Okay, I'll catch up with you later, but enjoy this shot. This is crazy, crazy good. Thank you. Okay, we are back for more. There's just so much I wanted to, you know, share a little bit more. My heart is still like building up for the next project, but I kind of have to purge some of this before I can continue. You know, a lot of thoughts, you know, in this present situation in the world, sort of like hard to tell where reality lies. You know, that we get so hoodwinked by everything. People are even being hoodwinked into thinking that this design isn't real, and it's a sign of insanity of some that is so far from the truth. In fact, this design allows you to be centered as a human because it is part of who we are. Which brings me to the conversation about the aspect of how, there is information here that is not prophetic in a sense that, it tells the future. It does speak of the human cycles, and including the world and the food chain. So, that's the big braid twisting fibers you see here is just the human in its involvement in the world. Which brings me to understanding, this idea of how this type of information travels through humans and the world. And, when I speak of a pareidolia trigger board, you can talk about triggers in different ways. For example, I can talk about, the black frogs that are found in Russia in the contaminated areas where the radiation has triggered frogs to become jet black. This is, something, obviously that's a trigger, that something that's happened before is already built into the genetic trigger board. The trigger board in genetics is, is what allows us to, quickly respond to our environment due to the idea that humans cycle back around, or the environment will circle back around. So in the chromosomes, there are all sorts of triggers to help the body respond to the environment. This is not only us, but it's among the nature as well, obviously. So with that said, this understanding of trigger and trigger boards, when you have a pareidolia trigger board, it is something that, is already been done here in the stone. An artist came and worked this into the design, and it was recorded in this type of documentation, human history. Now, the more we learn about this, the more we trigger understanding. Like anything else, you go to school, and it triggers understanding of things. It allows you to, learn things. There is some ways of learning, but understanding that, having confidence that there are parts of you that know things in survival mode that will allow you to respond to the world. I even think that, responding and understanding pareidolia in itself is a response to survival. In a very stressful situation, you may be able to respond to understanding what I'm trying to explain. That in a bottleneck situation where everything is lost as far as our wise ones, and the documentation in other forms like the web or books or whatever, if this is destroyed, we're going to eventually be triggered to look at the rock and see the story. And so, going back to stories, we spoke yesterday about, the nest. Up here we spoke about the nest. And I want to point out that I have another nest here. And in that nest, there's always that little fox, gosh darn it. And he's not only after the eggs, he's actually might have that goose that we see here. See the bird turning back with the feathers, and then you see the egg. You'll see another egg. That little fox is always trying to get the egg. There's also a hand here coming in, grabbing an egg. Now, let's stop a moment and see how this egg, but I have this egg here, and all of a sudden it becomes a glass full of ice. Then you can even put a straw in it. Now, when I walk along the beaches here in the coastal Maine, you'll see a lot of large stones, monumental erratics, and even smaller stones. But they're monumental in information anyway. And a lot as you walk along, there is, and as I say, this has modern information. You know, I'm not saying, especially in the blue areas, and you know, that's just what I'm finding, that things like the metallurgy and things like that involve water in different ways carry information of that nature. But color coding is really helpful. So there's a hand here reaching for an egg by someone collecting eggs, etc. But it's also, as we say, I see a glass with a straw, and then even a bigger glass with ice, and look, it even has a little umbrella, little umbrella drink, or maybe even a coconut drink, you know, with the, you know, line in the coconut and the straw. But there is this important story here too of alcoholism, and it's a very strong story. And I'm sure alcoholism is not new to humans. We've been fermenting things for a long time. So the story of fermentation and alcoholism, and you know, the undoing of some people through this, you know, excessive, addictive, can be a very sad situation. It's a strong story here. I also wanted to point out, oh yes, the hummingbird. Oh, the hummingbird is beautiful here. You can spot the hummingbird, and I have problems here too. I have beautiful gardens, and I have butterflies, and the hummingbirds just come and, you know, fly in and take out my favorite insects. I'm more about insects than hummingbirds, but oh, and these little hummingbirds that come and buzz in my head as if they challenge, I'm going to poke you in the eye. But here you can spot the hummingbird coming and having its discussion over the flower with the bees. And here this one turns around. You can see this little, and its little beak going into the flowers. You know, you will find that hummingbird everywhere, and its feistiness. Good for the hummingbird, but not good for my butterflies. So anyway, let's take a little break, and then we'll move on. Okay, so bear with me as I try to better my video making skills. I'm trying to splice some photos explaining what it is that I'm doing in the designs in such a way that will better help people understand. So this design here, which is the European version of the one of the larger piece that is supposed to be part of a two-part screen. In this one, you know, I was planning to use this on the other half of the screen, and you know, you can see that where it would have been the middle, and you know, you would have two halves, and then I would be able to take those and move those around the same way I did these. So I was excited to see that. But at the same time, this is not what I want to do. I do not want to spend any more time on this, although just because I want to get away from the modern material. But let's just finish up with this and explain how this arrangement began. First of all, my focus here was the painted pebble. And I wanted to sort of kill two birds with one stone, and sort of incorporate two artifacts which were from pretty much the same time, one attributed to Neanderthal and the other one supposedly attributed to the Cro-Magnon. The Cro-Magnon piece was originally, I believe, the Venus, was originally accredited to Neanderthal, but then as they then decided that it was Cro-Magnon at some point. But these are 40,000 years old. The Venus, the pebble, as well as from Spain, and supposedly attributed to Neanderthal, and it has a little thumbprint on it that they're attributing to pareidolia, and that but they are still insisting that the stone itself was never previously worked, and I beg to differ. I think this stone was worked over, and it was worked over recently, which, eventually, that shoe will drop. But I wanted to come back here and talk a little bit more about the stories here. There's a little bit of repetition here from my blogs where I've discussed this before, especially in the ones about the painted pebble, that I want to point out. The blue is color-coded for the Neanderthal pebble, which is stone. The warmer tones are coded for the Venus, which is ivory. So this is stone and ivory. So let's look a little bit more here. First of all, everybody says this is the Venus. I mean, it's upside down here. You can see, the Venus that you would recognize. But I have taken part of the stone and juxtaposed or cut it out so that you could see the juxtaposition of the Neanderthal pebble stone blue versus the warm ivory, supposedly Cro-Magnon piece. So you can start seeing how the blue and warm tones work. The first thing people see, the Venus, that might be a big woman with breasts and hips and belly full, and at the same time, I'm also thinking deep fried turkey. I'm sorry. I'm not sorry, but I'm saying is these people used to render fat. They used to have vats of fat. They had so much fat, and it would be hot, and they would throw just about anything you want in there. So if you're enjoying a clam dinner, maybe it was deep fried in some mammoth fat or blubber. I mean, these people were involved in the oceans. There was all kinds of fats you could add to your vat and drop your foods in there. So you'll see a lot of, fried chicken, whatever it is, a drumstick. These people were good chefs, and they were cracking open eggs. And so this thing is full of recipes and ways to cook. But right now we're going to flip it back over. And before, we were talking about, in the previous segment on the American one, we were talking about alcohol, drinks, whatever of that nature. But here, I'm pointing out the bottle. There's a bottle here, my favorite, and you can see the person opening. There's water too. You will notice the water blue. I'm using the blue for the stone, but at the same time, this blue is all, and I'm saying at the same time that this blue area, which is the supposed, pristine, untouched Neanderthal pebble with just a little touch of red on it, is far more than that. And here you have the glass bottle, and if you turn it, you will find your ship in a bottle, in the ocean, and you can see, even hands, how they're working the ship in a bottle. This is where might even in some ways you can start thinking of boat designs here, where you see different ships and how they may have been made. And I'm saying, these things overlap too nicely. This whole thing of what is Neanderthal and what is Cro-Magnon and what is modern, I can tell a lot more to find the modern thing than I am, separating the Neanderthal from the Cro-Magnon. So I want to move away from that and really get to, a different level past, the aspect of confusion here is, it would have been a lot more clear for me and have provided the information I'm seeking, which is, the more ancient history. But I've created a fun painting here for those who delve into the veil of pulp fiction, which is something that I really want to get away from. But there's a lot of fun things here. And another thing that I bring up is, if you guys know the story of Willow, and there is a sorceress who can shift change into different animals after being, she was cursed on an island by a nasty force, and she is freed to become, whatever phase changing she wants in order to help produce the right outcome in their story. She's a good one. So there's lots of stories here. I love the tiger that can grow some teeth here if you want, and the way his tail moves around, and the way it's interacting with the human here, who seems to be washing its paws. But then, should you trust that tiger? I don't know. That's up to you. I'm not putting my head in his mouth. So that's kind of fun. As far as I just want you to understand how much stuff is going on. Oh, another beauty here is, if you see this as a clavicle, you will see that there's a neck here. And then, if you look, I think she's beautiful, but she wears the horns, and then it becomes, this large bull. And I begin to think of, Socrates with his horns of knowledge. But in this case, I think it's a girl. Well, there might be a Socrates in there somewhere. All right, people. Thank you. Hello. So it's a beautiful day. I started out early. I'm experimenting with light. Last night I was up a little bit late, playing with lighting and looking at the paintings under different light, and it was definitely interesting. But anyway, I'll turn the camera around. But good morning. So here's me playing with the light. I needed to show off my flowers. They're coming in like crazy in the garden. No hummingbirds yet. They all wait for the bee balm, the mints to come in. Okay, so here we are. Back here, there was a few things more I wanted to talk to you about. And as I say, there's some metallics I have, and I think the fireplace at the night was effective. I have some of the curtains pulled up, but I think we can still see some fun stuff going on. So this morning, I wanted to just touch some bases still before we, partake in new project that will consume me completely, and I will shut all this stuff down in my head for a while. But I wanted to partake with you a little bit more, and it's the thing I was looking at earlier was that we spoke about. Let me get a little closer. We're speaking a little bit more how this up here was a nest, and now we're back up a little bit. I'm just at the awkward distance. So I'm looking this as a nest as well. And we talked about the hand coming in and grabbing an egg from the nest as well. And you also have, the fox coming in and wanting to grab an egg as well. And, if you start looking all around the nest, this is more like there's a goose right up front here with his wings going out with eggs on either side. And then you start looking for the other birds, and I, begin to see, eagles, bigger beaks, more of eagle forms here, actually taking off and flying. You also have a larger beak in Venezuela. What we have is one of the bigger eagles, a harpy eagle. So she has the big headrest. But I see the birds here coming in for a landing. And she's definitely hanging out with some big birds. If you care to move into the large birds, this eye up here has the big bird effect. Now, we're always talking about I'm always talking about the giants and how I'm comfortable saying from what I see in the design, especially both in Europe and here, the giant is here. And one of the things I want you to notice here is this blue grip that comes in here. I think that is reminiscent history of a large hand. I think that there is still here, oh look, and then just like you have giant humans that used to take advantage of the smaller humans, you also have some pretty big birds, and here you have a big claw coming down. There's always that big claw. We found this on the Azores too, where there's the perforated rocks, and you can see this as well as the perforated rock that we were finding in the Azores, even having the hole coming from inside, and the nest effect. But there is also the elephant coming in. I guess the elephants are known for eating eggs. I've heard of cattle enjoying. I don't know how all the chickens feel about it. It's probably some of them were just eager to get rid of rotten eggs. Other ones were probably thinking that maybe they wanted to sit on those eggs. Okay, so we got action. Okay, so we have a rainy morning. I am trying to set up my own little vibe here with lighting. As I said, I've used metallics in this painting, so depending on the lighting, depending how the different metallics reflect the direction of the light, will reveal different aspects of the painting. But what I'm most here about, I'm ready to close a few chapters in my brain for a while I focus on my next project. But I want to bring up the subject of pareidolia at this time. There are people out there talking about the importance of the spoken story that's passed down. And absolutely, I do believe that this occurred. But that doesn't in any way undermine the fact that the design supports these stories. The stories also show up in the design. The word pareidolia is not a disease or mental illness, or it is the actual way the brain processes information. It looks at things, it observes things, and then it looks for patterns. If it sees something once, it's triggered. What's that? Second time, or through experiences, like you see that it bites. That will trigger a memory. Next time you see that, you'll be thinking, does that bite? It bit me last time. So there is the aspect of pareidolia is observing and giving meanings to the patterns. Now, you might be saying, what I think people might be suggesting is that I am inventing stories in my paintings, in what I see in the stones, as just dribble. It's not my dribble. This is happening here. So I want you to understand this question of whether this design exists or not because there is such thing as pareidolia. Believe me, nothing would exist without pareidolia. That's what we do. That's the way the brain works. So to say that using pareidolia, to look at something people say don't exist. Now, the people that say it doesn't exist, it's because they are not looking. And it's not because they don't have the capacity to look. I think also there's this aspect where there are people that don't want people to know about this. I don't know. I think this is for everybody. I think we are free to be who we are. I think we are free to see and look for ourselves. So, I think that sometimes religion tries to look for us and make decisions for us from the design. For example, they see the symbol of the snake as one thing, the apple another, and in reality, maybe these were tools that were used to use a cult to control humans, to keep them from growing to their greatest capacity, to keep them from making their own decisions and figuring things out for themselves. So I just want you to beware. I also want you to understand why I'm doing these videos. I'm presenting to you ideas, not ideas. I'm presenting to you different, my partner calls them archetypes. And I understand archetypes, and I see what the understanding of that. And these archetypes have been used and misused because they are imprinted in the human brain in such a way that it immediately looks at it and says, I know that. So we know a lot if we give ourselves the chance. Don't think pareidolia is anything but trying to provide you with the truth. That's all. You need to look twice. You need to look 3 times. It builds. It works its way, and you begin to understand it. So, some people like to knock things they don't understand, but you'll understand this. All you have to do is spend a little time with it. But thank you, everybody. As I say, I'm doing my best to clip some of these things together. So I'm going to make one long movie, seeing if I can actually splice some of these things together. So bear with me. This is going to be but then I'm going to close that for a while as I go into the studio to paint. But I just want to, I want to get this done. When I'm done, I probably won't even be able to explain to you how I did it. Oh dear, but we'll get there. Thank you. Okay, this is just more little spliced videos. I'm trying to put one bigger movie together, so we'll see how it works. This is a painting that is using European resources. It is the supposed painted Neanderthal pebble, and then the other piece is the ivory Holstein Venus. The bluer areas we described are the stone, and the warmer areas are the ivory. The first thing I want you to pick up on is this nice set of shoulders here, the torso, this arm going back this way. Also the nice cod piece here. I don't know if people fully, the cod piece is sort of like you would tie legs on of your pants to your belt. But then those 2 legs would leave your crotch open, so you would add a cod piece and you would decorate it to your preference. And but the action I want to show you more is, first of all, you got the sort of like the lunge of a fencer. You also have the stride of a full run. So you have these different leg positions here. You also have the arm here leaning back, and you see this, what I think is a lance this way. Now, I think this is referencing to the Neanderthal throwing spears. No, so I think there is a notion that they also had a rope tied to, or tethered to their spears. So in actuality, it would have been a harpoon, if you think about it. And I think that harpoon was tied to them, and that's the action they were using and getting up close to large animals and ripping that harpoon back out. What I'm suggesting here now is, if you look up close here, it's talking about something about a chip in someone's shoulder, you know? I believe that chip on their shoulder is probably referencing, you know, torn ligatures that are caused by that action. So I think it's also when they start looking at the atlatl, where it may have even been a almost like think of it as a what is it when you have well, anyway, a repair for those who had a ripped ligament or tenement in the shoulder from having to work so hard, or being pulled suddenly, you know, by that rope, or whatever reason they had for shoulder injuries. The atlatl would be perfect area, you know, even to replace an arm or a damaged limb in order to be able to still hunt. These things are all involved here. And I think this one is very nice. You can see how, you know, first you have the smaller human here, standing here, you know, wearing, you know, some sort of skirting here. But then all of a sudden it becomes a larger head with a headdress, almost like you think of the Egyptian headdresses. So there's a lot of things going on here. And the thing I want you to keep in mind is how important what people are wearing, fashion. It's almost like a Vogue cover, magazine cover, where, you know, you are able to date the cover just by what people are wearing and the styles. You know, what shoes, how high is a heel, how long is the hair, how is it braided, what are the textiles, patterns. It is all on a timeline. Okay, guys, I've got to give it up here, but this is pretty cool. There's so many things to see here. So there's even a bigger profile here. You know, this guy with almost has a big chin. The big chin is always popping up. I just sometimes think that genetic things happen just from things like interbreeding, and then, you know, become at some point acceptable or not acceptable. So maybe the chin is a product of some interbreeding at some point that all of a sudden the ladies liked. Just an idea. A chin could be just a cosmetic thing that girls liked. I mean, it also involves chewing and how one uses their jaw, but at the same time, I think some of it could be, who knows. Thank you. Okay. All right, one more. I just want to focus in on this area. When, if you look back on my blogs and writings, you can either find them on Medium or Blogger. In the stories about the dragon and other stories, I often make reference to the egg and it cracking open and out coming the little chicks. But also the reference to eggs being used for water. As I've pointed out, a lot of the blue area seems to be the water flow. I'm not, but I do see, you know, here, you know, a hand. There is a hand, I think, offering, you know, showing you what happens when the egg pops open and the little chick and the mother duck and, you know, all the birds that have things that hatch open, and, you know, how the snake can come and take it all away. But the offering of the egg cracked open with the chick, and the sign of hope is something that is often seen in our stones. So as I say, we keep on looking. Just remember, use all the information I'm offering you to see if your trigger board is triggered. Enjoy. Okay, special presentation. So you sent me your landscape, and I'm showing you the story of Krishna, the blue guy here. So initially, they're in a boat, and there's a drowning where he is saved and picked up and brought on to the lap of the great lady, where she does her thrusts and turning to get him resuscitated. And then he recovers. But then you can also begin to see, the possibility here is of the orca and the shark. You see the shark fin here. You see the orca, and you begin to see, that spin we were talking about between the orca. So here's your landscape. Here's your orca. Here's your, great white. You're welcome. One more thing I forgot to mention was the body lying at this angle is the mariner, the navigator, waiting for the seven sisters to rise so they can guide him through, his peaceful navigation. He really relies on them. Maybe there's association with the coming of the orcas and the seven sisters. I wonder. Might be something to check into. Okay, one more to add, because I've been following this fella here. So the pelican here. This is one that it's real pelican, and the way the pelican is able to, fill its mouth with water, and then we talked about how then you see the womb, etc. But here you have the orca coming up, and you have, oh my goodness, there's always water involved. And then there's a little story here of the mermaids we were talking about, with their flippers on. A lot of times when I go swimming long ways, I literally, if I go for more than an hour, it takes me a moment to be able, not only are my legs tired, of course, but to put my brain back into walking mode rather than swimming mode. Because when you swim, you're doing this, and you get into a groove, and you just do it until you're just have your own wake behind you, and you're flowing. But these people are stopping and resting on the beach. You can see them sitting there like mermaids, and out of nowhere comes the alligator and eats them all. That was a bad plan. And if not, it was, I don't know, it looks like everybody's trying to take even the shark is right there. I don't know if it's the shark coming at the human and the orca coming after the shark. And then there's an even bigger shark. Megalodon? Maybe. So we're going to be looking at the whole studio real quick here, and then move on. We're trying to put a good movie together, but I'm really enjoying this morning. The elephants, even just sitting for this sketch, even though it's just a brief sketch, you can fathom the depth of layers here.